Hello everybody, welcome to Unit 6 of your Women's and Gender Studies 201. You'll have been doing some reading about, oil sands and fracking and, sort of some impacts. You've also done some reading in your literature about people like Vandana Shiva and what's required for us to transform, the state of the world, kind of where the environment is concerned. And she suggests it's going to require, an entire overhaul of our sort of relationship to the natural world, which I would agree with. She happens to be one of my very favorite people. A few years ago, we brought her to the university, and I had the privilege of being her handler, so I got to pick her up from the airport, take her back to the airport, and transport her to the events. We got to share a couple of meals together, and having taught her stuff for forever, and having studied her stuff since I sort of started being an academic, I was absolutely enthralled, and she is as sort of fantastic as you might have seen in some of my classes on film, or the kinds of things that you read about her. She's terrifyingly smart, and just a really committed example of what it means to take action and be creating good change, right? To leave the world a little better than you found it. So, anyways, I love her, and I hope that you have enjoyed her. On this front, I'm going to give you, some of you will know already from having taken classes with me, a little bit about her principles of democracy, but I'm going to just give you a brief little sort of rundown of what that looks like, since you've seen or have read a little bit about her in your the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of the Earth. They're the textbook that's uploaded. That's not the exact title, but close in any case. A couple of things that I wanted you to think about this week. One in particular, actually, is that, some of what you read talked about the impact on water of the oil sands. And that's a really big deal. The oil industry is a really big deal here in Saskatchewan. It's had a profound effect on our economy. Lots of families have really been struggling. The Vulcan oil field in the south of Saskatchewan has a ton of oil and good oil, and unfortunately we've become pretty reliant, not only as sort of like a global community in general, right, just to live and for our products and all of those things, but particularly in our communities, right, just here in Saskatchewan, across Canada in lots of different ways. But we can feel it, in a really sort of immediate way here in Saskatchewan, because so many of our families are struggling since the oil industry kind of went bust. It's starting to pick up a little bit now, but there's been some incredible financial hardship and economic hardship for local families, people in our communities who have lost homes and lost their livelihoods and all of these things. And it's a real, it's a very difficult issue, I feel like, because it would be callous to suggest that, like, too bad, this is just the way that it is. I understand that it's having a profound impact on families, and that everyday lives of people in my community are being very much, sort of compromised by their inability to find work. This is where people have worked their whole lives. Families have built their lives around this industry. And so, of course, I'm compassionate, and I feel terrible that there are people in my family who've worked in oil and have been, finding this crisis quite difficult. But at the end of the day, we are where we are in terms of the environment, and we've got to get away from this oil dependency, because it's not sustainable. We cannot continue on this path. That's the end of it. And when I think about, sort of the potential for disaster, right, what fracking does, and the potential for spills, and what we know happens when there are spills, and there are, when things leak, and what happens to our natural world. I think sometimes in Canada we feel isolated from the big impacts of this sort of stuff. We've got this sort of naive sense, whether it's sort of a social crisis or an environmental crisis, right? Because we have such a huge country, and things don't ever seem quite as bad here. And I think sometimes we are a little bit insulated, and like I said, we just don't feel those immediate impacts. Many of us don't. And it's important to keep that in mind, because many of us do. As of October of 2016, there were still 132 water advisories for 89 reserve communities in our country. And I think that's something that it doesn't get a lot of airplay, and it's something that we don't talk about all the time. That's a very real indicator of, sort of where we're at as a country that prides itself on being so progressive and, sort of not participating in environmental degradation or racism or any of these things, maybe to the same degree as like our neighbors to the south, or Canadians have a real sense of pride, and so we should. I love my country. I'm proud to be Canadian. But I think we do ourselves a real disservice when we don't acknowledge the truth of what's happening. And so for 89 reserves in our country to have water advisories of some description, whether that's boil only, do not consume, whatever it might be, that tells a pretty ugly tale, and not the kind of story that most of us, that is the forefront of most of our minds when we think about what it means to be Canadian, right? So we have lots of people in our country, in our communities, that don't have access to safe drinking water. And so when we think about the connection of that to pipelines, which is how oil and things of this nature are transported, and their potential to really damage water systems, we already have people who don't have access. I'm not sure that that's a risk that we can afford to take. And that goes beyond sort of that when some of us turn on our taps, clean water comes out, right? It's not, or that we go to the store and buy. It's beyond that. Water's not a renewable resource, right? We have water sources, and that's it. And when they're ruined, right? For the earth to sort of recover from this kind of damage, it's not going to happen tomorrow. And so we need to be thinking sort of long term. It's this precautionary principle that you've sort of been learning about all semester long, that it's not about whether I have water tomorrow, or whether, in the next 30 years that I might live, or 40 years or 50 years that I might live, or, wherever we might be, that probably won't be that bad by the time I die. But it's not about that. It's about these future generations, and it's about the world at large, or the planet at large, and all of the other living beings that are on it and all across the planet, right? Their ability to flourish, or for life to be able to sustain itself. And water, we can't live without water. We can live without oil, but we can't live without water. And so it really does require what Shiva talks about, which is this sort of transformation of our relationship to the natural world, and the way that we conceive of our lives and what is necessary. She talks in one of her books about this earth democracy. And so there excuse me, there are 10 principles of earth democracy. I'm just going to quickly go over them and then leave you for the week. But just to sort of help flesh out sort of what we're talking about when we think about being transformative, when we think about a different sort of relationship to the planet and our communities that maybe aren't so close to us, and a bit of a different worldview that might allow us to actually conceive of a way of life that is sustainable. There are 10 principles. So the first one is that all species, peoples, and cultures have intrinsic worth. All beings are subjects, not objects, and no humans have the right to own species, people, or knowledge of cultures through patents or intellectual property rights. Principle 2, the Earth community is a democracy of life, which means that this is an interconnected web of life. We're obligated to live in a way that protects ecological processes and the rights and well-beings of all peoples and species. So plants, animals, the whole shebang. Number 3, diversity in nature and culture must be defended. This is the obligation and the responsibility of all people, because diversity is the only way that life can flourish. Number 4, all beings have a natural right to sustenance. So that's the right to food and water, to safe and clean habitat, and security of ecological space. And she says all of this is really just a right to life. Number 4, Earth democracy is based on living economies and economic democracy. She says that economic democracy protects ecosystems and their integrity, people's livelihoods, and provides for basic needs. In an economic democracy, there are no disposable people, species, or cultures, and it's based on sustainability, diversity, and multiplicity. So really recognizing this interconnection, it's profound, right? And that diversity is key to the web of life. Number 6, living economies are built on local economies. Based on lively local economies that support national and global economies. Localization of economies is a social and ecological imperative, and this is about diverse and decentralized economies. Number 7, an Earth democracy is a living democracy. It's the democracy of life in everyday life. It grows from the bottom up instead of the top down. It's organized on principles of inclusion, diversity, ecological and social responsibility. And it values self-governance and self-rule. Number 8, Earth democracy is based on living cultures. It promotes peace, creates safe spaces for practices of and adoption of varying religions, and encourages the thriving of cultural diversity. So again, like the thread for her, diversity, diversity, diversity. Monoculture, whether it's in a particular seed or grain, or life itself sort of on a larger social scale. Monoculture is no good, right? Diversity is the only way that we can actually thrive and flourish. Number 9, Living cultures are life-nourishing, based on the integrity and respect for all life, human and non-human, and past and future generations. Recognize the multiplicity of identities and ways of being. It connects the individual to the earth and to life. All life. And finally, number 10, Unearthed Democracy globalizes peace, care, and compassion. It connects people in circles of care, cooperation, and compassion instead of dividing them through competition, fear, hatred, and conflict. And so she notes that living societies, living ecosystems, living organisms, and living cultures center on 3 principles. The principle of diversity, as I mentioned, principle of self-organization, self-regulation, and self-renewal, and the principle of reciprocity between systems, the law of return or the law of give and take. Right? And so really, I like this sort of framework of Unearthed Democracy because I feel like it encompasses sort of everything that it seems like is plaguing our world, right? It's a bit of an answer or a bit of a call to action on all of those fronts, right? And she really focuses on the way that all of those things all of those injustices and all of the isms and all of the sort of dangers are interconnected, and that this focus on interdependence, on the interconnection, on a web of life, on diversity and the necessity for diversity and multiplicity is a thread that runs through everything that we talk about, right? Whether we're talking about the environment, whether we're talking about racism, it doesn't matter what we're talking about, right? These are the keys. And so it's a really great framework in my estimation for sort of attempting to reconstruct a worldview that can lead us in a productive sort of direction. So in any case, there's a quick sort of food for thought video for you this week. Next week is the break, so I hope that you have an excellent week and take some time away from the class if you're able. Don't forget that your second quiz is on the 26th, and it will be open from, I don't know, like it's a 12 to 12 or 11 to 11 or whatever it might be. And the second thing is that a couple of you have emailed me about like journal entries and the discussion forums. I have a TA who does some of the marking for me. I look at all your stuff, so please know that I'm not disregarding your emails. At this point, I'm trying to go through the journal entries and the discussion forums, the first forum, to give you some constructive feedback. So I will post another video and I will get back to your emails if you've emailed me and haven't heard from me. I just really want to have a solid go through to see sort of how everyone has understood the request of the assignment, right? The intent of the assignment, and have some really solid feedback to give you. So just know that I'm not ignoring you. I'm just sort of combing through those things to see where's the potential for some misunderstanding. Was it in the assignment? Was it not? So I can give you some really good feedback about how things were graded, and then we'll be able to have sort of a constructive conversation about that. So again, please don't panic. I'm having a look at that stuff. I am around next week. I will be on campus at the university. So if anybody is looking to stop by, if you want clarification on anything, if you're in town, certainly feel free to contact me and we can make an appointment and you can come see me. Otherwise, please have an awesome break. I hope that you enjoy it. The weather is supposed to be decent in any case. So, yeah, have a really great week, and I will post another video soon regarding, once I've had a chance next week probably to go through all of the journals and things. And I'll post another video about the next unit next week as well. So whether you take the break or not, I will continue to sort of post. So have a great break, have a great week, and I will see you soon. Take care.